My fiancé declared, "Cancel the honeymoon. I'd rather spend 2 weeks with my friends in Ibiza." I replied, "That's fine. Honeymoon's off." Instead, I took her sister to the same resort, with the tickets she never saw. I used to believe that love was a shield strong enough to protect two people from the world. When I proposed to Isabel, I thought I had found that shield. We had been together for 4 years, lived through late nights of study, early mornings of work, and countless family dinners where her parents welcomed me as one of their own. I worked long hours in finance, stacking every spare dollar for the wedding and the dream honeymoon we planned together. It wasn't about the money, it was about the memory, the start of something permanent. But illusions break quietly, in moments so casual they don't feel real at first. It was 10 days before the wedding. Isabel came home late, her perfume laced with a hint of gin and tonic, laughter still lingering in her voice. She sat on the sofa, kicked off her heels, and scrolled through her phone. I mentioned the itinerary for the honeymoon, the first-class flights, the ocean villa I had reserved a year in advance. I spoke with excitement, expecting her to lean into me, to smile the way she used to when we dreamed of escapes together. Instead, she waved her hand in dismissal, eyes fixed on the screen. She muttered that 2 weeks with just me sounded exhausting. Her friends had planned Ibiza for the same dates, and she wanted in. She told me, without a hint of apology, that the honeymoon should be canceled. Not postponed, not changed. Canceled. I remember the silence afterward. Not the silence of shock, but the silence of something collapsing inside your chest, brick by brick. I nodded once. That was all. She didn't notice the way my hands froze, the way my chest tightened. She laughed, texting her friend that Ibiza was officially confirmed. I sat in the same room, invisible, my mind already turning in directions I didn't know it could. I didn't argue. I didn't shout. I didn't demand an explanation. If she had looked at me for even a second, she might have seen that something in me had shifted. Instead, she poured herself another drink and started humming to the music on her phone. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, the word canceled echoing in my head. She had turned our honeymoon into an inconvenience. She had taken my months of planning, the tickets I had guarded like treasure, and dismissed them as though they were a boring weekend errand. It wasn't only the insult. It was the revelation. The next morning, at a family brunch, her sister Celeste sat across from me. Celeste was younger by 3 years, quieter, the type who blended into the background at family events. Unlike Isabel, she didn't command rooms. She observed them. I caught her watching Isabel brag to their cousins about Ibiza, her tone dripping with superiority. Celeste's expression tightened, a flicker of something sharp crossing her face. Later, when Isabel left the table to take a call, Celeste leaned toward me. Her voice was careful, almost reluctant, as if she wasn't sure she should say the words. She's been planning this for weeks. The Ibiza trip. The honeymoon never mattered to her. It was the first time I realized that Celeste wasn't blind to her sister's cruelty. I didn't answer her then. I just nodded, but inside, a storm had begun. That afternoon, I dug deeper. Isabel's phone was always within reach, but I never felt the need to check it before. Trust had been my default. But now, I paid attention to what was right in front of me. The way she giggled while texting, the way she called me dull behind my back to her friends. I didn't have to hack anything. She left her messages open, screen flashing as she showered. One message burned itself into me. He's obsessed with me. I'll be in Ibiza, and he'll still pay the bills. Men like him are just wallets with rings. I put her phone down, sat on the edge of the bed, and realized that my fiancée wasn't a partner. She was a parasite. Still, I didn't confront her. Confrontation gives power. Instead, I smiled when she asked me to confirm her cancellation of the honeymoon. I agreed. Calm, easy, compliant. She believed it. What she didn't know was that the tickets were already paid for, the villa already secured, and every booking in my name. Canceling meant a heavy penalty, and I wasn't about to throw away what I had spent months building. If she wanted Ibiza, she could have it. I had other plans forming, though I didn't yet know how sharp they would become. The days leading up to the wedding grew stranger. Isabel flaunted her Ibiza plans openly, gathering outfits and beach accessories as if she were preparing for a victory parade. Her friends visited, laughing in the living room, tossing back champagne, talking about freedom after the wedding stress. She acted as though I were her sponsor, not her partner. Celeste kept her distance during these gatherings, but I noticed her watching me. A few times, our eyes met, and I saw questions in hers. Once, after everyone left, she asked me quietly in the hallway if I was all right. Her tone was different from anyone else's. Genuine. I wanted to tell her everything, to spill the betrayal, but I swallowed the urge. For now, silence was my ally. One evening, while Isabel was out late again, Celeste found me on the porch. She had a blanket draped over her shoulders and a glass of wine in her hand. She sat down without asking, exhaled as if carrying a weight she couldn't drop. She admitted that Isabel had always been this way, selfish, cruel, mocking. As children, Isabel had stolen her clothes, sabotaged her dates, even lied about her to their parents. It was a lifetime of sabotage wrapped in a pretty smile. Hearing it from her lips turned my vague resentment into something sharper. This wasn't just a bad moment, a phase, or nerves before the wedding. This was Isabel. This was who she had always been. I went inside later that night and opened my email confirmation for the honeymoon. 2 tickets. First class. Non-refundable. I stared at the second name slot and realized, for the first time, that it didn't have to remain Isabel's. It could be changed. It could be reassigned. That thought stayed with me. At the rehearsal dinner, Isabel arrived late, half drunk, eyes flashing with annoyance at every detail that wasn't perfect. She made a toast about how lucky I was to have her, drawing laughter from her friends. Celeste rolled her eyes, and I caught it. The small rebellion she didn't mean for anyone to see. The rehearsal ended, but the decision inside me had already been made. I would not cancel the honeymoon. Isabel's declaration had freed me in a way she couldn't imagine. If she wanted Ibiza with her shallow circle, she could have it. But I would not sit at home humiliated. The night before the wedding, I logged into the airline portal and re-entered the guest details. The system prompted me. Would you like to update the second traveler? I typed a new name. Celeste. Not out of romance. Not yet. But out of something far more primal, defiance. When I clicked confirm, a strange calm washed over me. The wedding itself was another storm, but I'll come back to that. What mattered most in that first part of the story was the choice I made in silence. While Isabel bragged about Ibiza, I had already rewritten the future she thought she controlled, and she would never see it coming. The morning of the wedding arrived heavy with expectation. Guests filled the hall, flowers arched above polished tables, music hummed softly in the background. On the surface, everything was perfect, but I stood in my tailored suit, staring at Isabel walking down the aisle, and all I could think of was her message to her friends. Men like him are just wallets with rings. I smiled when she reached me, kissed her hand when the vows were said, and slipped the band onto her finger. Every camera captured the image of a man deeply in love. No one suspected that I had already decided this marriage was a transaction that ended before it even began. At the reception, Isabel drank too much champagne, danced with her friends, and ignored half the relatives who tried to congratulate her. She was radiant, but her glow wasn't for me. It was for the attention. She thrived on it. She needed people to watch, to envy, to whisper about how beautiful she was. I was a prop in her performance, nothing more. The truth gnawed at me as I clinked glasses and posed for photographs. The more she flaunted, the clearer my plan became. It wasn't enough to leave quietly. That would only feed her story, that she was too good for me, that I couldn't handle her energy. No, her downfall had to come from her own arrogance. The first step was patience. That night, when the guests dispersed and Isabel stumbled to bed in her new bridal lingerie, I stayed awake at the desk in our hotel suite. I logged into the resort booking again, confirmed the updated tickets, and checked every reservation under my and Celeste's names. My heart pounded with a mixture of nerves and exhilaration. The risk was enormous, but so was the satisfaction. I returned to bed, lying beside Isabel as she mumbled in her sleep about Ibiza. She had no idea her honeymoon seat was already occupied by her sister. Over the next few days, Isabel's selfishness only sharpened. She bragged to anyone who would listen about her upcoming Ibiza escape. She dismissed relatives who asked about our honeymoon, waving them off with a smug laugh. She even joked in front of her mother that a 2-week vacation with Dominic sounded like punishment compared to her friends. The cruelty didn't sting anymore. It fueled me. Celeste noticed. She always noticed. While Isabel floated in her bubble of vanity, Celeste observed the cracks. One evening, after dinner at her parents' house, Celeste caught me as I was leaving. She pulled me aside, her eyes searching mine. "You're too calm," she said softly. "It's like you've already decided something." Her intuition startled me. She wasn't wrong. I almost told her, almost revealed the entire plot right there, but I stopped myself. Not yet. She needed to walk into it without knowing, to keep it genuine. If she suspected, she might back away. Instead, I asked her a question. "What would you do," I said, "if someone betrayed you so openly, but you couldn't walk away without making them see it first?" Celeste studied me for a long moment. Then she whispered, "I'd make sure they fell by their own hand." Her answer sealed it for me. Celeste wasn't fragile. She wasn't naive like I had assumed. She had a streak of steel inside her, buried under years of being overshadowed by Isabel. The wedding week slipped into routine. Isabel busied herself with fittings for Ibiza outfits and endless brunches with her friends. She laughed more with them than she ever did with me. She spoke of freedom, of adventure, of nightlife. I was a ghost in her home, useful for bills and appearances. But every ghost has a purpose. 2 nights before Isabel's Ibiza flight, I carefully packed my suitcase. Not in our bedroom. She would have noticed. I kept my bag hidden in the car. When she asked where I was going while she was away, I told her I'd be working overtime. She didn't care enough to press for details. That same night, I met Celeste by accident at a cafe near the train station. Or at least that's how it looked. In reality, I had tracked her routine enough to know she often stopped there after work. I invited her to sit with me, and for the first time, the conversation flowed without hesitation. She talked about her life, her studies in architecture, her struggles to be taken seriously next to Isabel, how every boyfriend she had ever introduced was either charmed away by Isabel or scared off by her shadow. She confessed she hated Ibiza talk, hated how Isabel gloated about using me. I listened, not just because it was useful, but because I saw in her something Isabel had crushed: honesty. By the end of the coffee, I asked her if she had plans for the coming week. She shrugged. Work mostly. What? I didn't answer directly. I just smiled and said, you might want to keep a few days open. Her eyes narrowed in curiosity, but she let it go. The night before the flights, Isabel barely came home. She partied with her friends, returned drunk, and collapsed into bed without so much as a word. I watched her sleep, and for the first time, I felt nothing. No pain, no love, no regret. She was a stranger in my house, wearing a ring she didn't value, married in name only. The morning of departure split us like a fork in the road. Isabel left for Ibiza with her glittering entourage, posting selfies from the airport, hashtags dripping with arrogance. She didn't even text me goodbye. 2 hours later, I drove Celeste to the international terminal. Her confusion was palpable when I handed her the ticket. At first, she thought it was a mistake. Then she saw the destination, Maldives. The resort Isabel believed had been canceled. Her breath caught. Dominic, what is this? I told her everything. Not every detail about Isabel's messages, but enough for her to understand. That the honeymoon wasn't canceled. That I wasn't going alone. That she deserved better than being Isabel's shadow forever. For a long minute, she stared at me, torn between shock and hesitation. But then something shifted in her face. A quiet resolve. Let's go, she whispered. The flight was long, but the weight lifted with every mile we left behind. Sitting beside Celeste, I saw her relax for the first time. She didn't try to impress anyone. She didn't wear masks. She leaned back, closed her eyes, and let out a sigh that sounded like freedom. When we arrived, the resort unfolded like a dream. Turquoise waters, white sand, private villas perched on stilts above the ocean. The staff greeted us as honeymooners, congratulated us, showered us with flowers. Celeste blushed, but didn't correct them. Neither did I. The first night, we dined by torchlight on the beach. The waves whispered against the shore, and Celeste admitted she had never experienced anything like it. She laughed more freely than I had ever heard before. Her laughter wasn't mocking, wasn't cruel, it was real. And somewhere deep inside me, a dangerous thought took root. Maybe this wasn't just revenge. Maybe it was a beginning. Back in Ibiza, Isabel posted stories of crowded clubs, neon lights, strangers pressing against her in sweaty bars. She thought she was living her best life. But she didn't know that her sister was walking barefoot on a moonlit beach, sipping champagne, looking more radiant than Isabel ever had. The irony tasted sweeter than any victory I had imagined. Still, I knew the storm hadn't peaked. Fate has a way of colliding paths, and I could feel it brewing even as Celeste and I settled into the rhythm of paradise. For the moment, though, I let myself savor it. Every smile from Celeste, every glance across the table, every shared secret under the stars. Revenge had brought us here, but something else was starting to rise from its ashes. I didn't know how quickly it would all come crashing together. The days that followed felt like stepping into another life. Celeste and I settled into the resort as though the place had been built for us. Morning swims in warm, glass-clear water, long afternoons under palm shade, dinners with tables set right on the sand. Everywhere we went, people congratulated us as newlyweds, and neither of us corrected them. At first, Celeste blushed whenever the staff addressed her as my wife. But soon she let the role slip over her like a second skin. It wasn't performance, it was comfort. She laughed more easily, spoke with confidence I hadn't seen before, and even teased me lightly, something Isabel never did without cruelty laced into it. I realized how much of my old relationship had been about managing someone else's ego. With Celeste, there was no performance, just ease. Yet beneath the beauty of those days, a storm brewed. I could feel it in my bones, The inevitable crash between Isabel's arrogance and my silent rebellion. The first sign came on the fourth evening. Celeste and I had just finished a dive excursion and were walking back toward the villa when I heard a burst of laughter. It wasn't unusual. The resort was full of groups celebrating. But this one carried a note I knew all too well. I froze. The laugh was Isabel's. For a moment, I thought my mind was playing tricks. But then I heard her voice, sharp and distinct, echoing across the poolside bar. She was here. Celeste stopped too, her eyes wide. "That can't be," she began. But the words died on her lips as we both turned the corner. There she was. Isabel, perched on a bar stool in a short, glittering dress, surrounded by the same friends she had sworn to run wild with in Ibiza. They clinked glasses of neon cocktails, snapping photos, posing for strangers. Isabel was the center, as always, laughing with her head thrown back, hair cascading like a crown. I felt Celeste's hand grip my wrist. Her nails dug into my skin, not in pain, but in shock. Isabel hadn't seen us yet. We pulled back, retreating into the shadow of palm trees. My pulse hammered as I realized the magnitude of this coincidence. She hadn't gone to Ibiza at all, or maybe Ibiza had bored her, and she had moved on to the Maldives midweek. Either way, fate had drawn her to the very place she told me she would never set foot. Celeste's whisper cut through the pounding in my head. "What do we do?" I stared at Isabel across the pool, her laughter slicing the night air. And slowly, a plan unfolded in my mind. "We wait," I told Celeste. That night, we didn't go to the main restaurant. We ordered dinner in our villa, ate under the stars, and stayed quiet. Celeste's mind buzzed with the same electricity as mine. She asked questions, wondering what Isabel would do when she saw us together. I didn't answer. Some outcomes are too delicious to spoil by prediction. The next morning, fate decided for us. We were at breakfast by the ocean when I felt the air shift. Isabel entered the restaurant, her entourage trailing behind. She was dressed in white linen, sunglasses perched on her head, walking with the strut of someone who thought the world belonged to her. She didn't see us at first, but when her eyes landed on our table, on me pouring orange juice into Celeste's glass, her body stiffened. For a moment, she froze in disbelief, as though the image refused to compute. Then the glass in her hand slipped and shattered on the floor. Her friends rushed to her side, asking if she was okay. But her eyes stayed locked on me, widening as she registered the reality. Her husband, in the Maldives, seated across from her sister. Celeste lowered her gaze to her plate, tense and pale. I, however, lifted my glass in a calm toast. No words, just acknowledgement. The restaurant buzzed with whispers. Isabel's reaction was too dramatic to ignore. She stormed out, her friends trailing behind like scattered birds. Celeste exhaled shakily once the storm passed. "She'll come for us," she whispered. I nodded. "Let her." The confrontation came that afternoon. We were lounging near the pool when Isabel marched up, fury radiating from her. Her sunglasses were gone, revealing eyes bloodshot from rage and alcohol. She didn't care who was watching. Her voice cracked like a whip. "What the hell is this?" Heads turned. Tourists paused mid-swim. Staff froze in place. The scene belonged to us now. I rose slowly, keeping my composure. "You told me to cancel the honeymoon. You wanted Ibiza. I respected that." Her face contorted. "With my sister?" Celeste flinched at the venom in her voice, but didn't back down. She met Isabel's glare with quiet defiance. I tilted my head. "Funny, isn't it? You said I was just a wallet with a ring. Maybe you should have checked who held the wallet before you laughed with your friends." Gasps rippled through the onlookers. Isabel froze, her mouth opening and closing, but no words forming. The staff tried to calm the situation, urging us to take it private, but the damage was done. The audience was locked in. Isabel lunged at Celeste, but I stepped between them. The resort security intervened before it escalated further, escorting Isabel and her shrieking friends away. The rest of the day, whispers followed us like shadows. People stared, piecing together gossip. By dinner, Isabel's version of the story had already begun unraveling. Her friends weren't as loyal as she thought. Some sided with her out of habit, but others looked at her with thinly veiled contempt. Her reputation was bleeding out in real time. Back in our villa, Celeste sat trembling on the bed. She wasn't weak, she was furious. Furious at Isabel for dragging her into public humiliation, furious for years of being overshadowed. She looked at me with a clarity I hadn't seen before. "She doesn't get to win again," she said. I nodded. "She won't." The next morning, Isabel tried to reclaim ground. She strutted into breakfast alone, wearing a new dress, her hair flawless, pretending nothing had happened. But whispers trailed behind her like smoke. She glared at us from across the room, but it no longer had the same power. Celeste held her head high, eating slowly, deliberately. For the first time in her life, she wasn't in her sister's shadow. She was sitting in the sun, unashamed, beside a man who no longer bowed to Isabel's cruelty. The resort became a theater, and every guest and audience member waiting for the final act. I knew the climax hadn't arrived yet. Isabel wasn't finished. She couldn't stand to lose, not in public, not in front of her sister, and not with me walking away without scars. But what she didn't understand was that the stage was mine now, and I was only warming up. By the 5th day at the resort, the tension had reached boiling point. Isabel had stopped hiding her fury. Every time we crossed paths, her stare burned into me, venom radiating from her posture. Her friends were fracturing into cliques, some amused by the scandal, others embarrassed to be associated with her. The paradise setting only made the contrast sharper: turquoise waters, bright skies, and beneath it all, Isabel's unraveling. I knew she was planning something. Isabel had always been impulsive, but she was also vindictive. She wouldn't sit back and watch me enjoy myself, especially not with Celeste. The strike came during a resort dinner. It was one of those grand buffet nights by the ocean, with lanterns swaying in the breeze and long tables where guests mingled freely. Celeste and I sat together, plates of seafood between us, when Isabel appeared, dressed like she was attending a red carpet gala instead of a beachside feast. She had chosen scarlet, a deliberate weapon of visibility. She didn't sit. She stood by our table, commanding the attention of everyone around us, and raised her voice just enough to carry across the space. "Do you all see this?" she asked, gesturing at us. "My husband, the man who married me less than 2 weeks ago, is here on our honeymoon, with my sister." The table fell silent. Forks hovered midair. Even the music seemed to dim. It was her attempt at turning the crowd against us, to paint me as the betrayer, the hypocrite. But what she didn't know was that I had come prepared. I stood slowly, my expression calm. "Yes," I said clearly, making sure my voice carried. "But before you pass judgment, let's share the whole truth." I pulled my phone from my pocket and opened the saved screenshots, the ones I had quietly taken of her messages before the wedding. Her words lit the screen: "He's obsessed with me. He'll pay for everything, and I'll spend my freedom in Ibiza." Another: "Men like him are just wallets with rings." Gasps rippled around the tables as I held the phone out. People leaned closer, whispers cutting through the silence. Isabel's face drained of color. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. She told me to cancel the honeymoon. She chose Ibiza. I respected her choice, and I wasn't going to let her arrogance waste what I had built. Celeste sat rigid, her hands trembling slightly under the table, but she didn't hide. She lifted her chin, letting the truth hang heavy in the air. Isabel lunged forward, trying to snatch the phone, but a guest blocked her. Resort staff intervened, guiding her away as murmurs swelled into judgment. She shrieked, demanding to be heard, but the audience wasn't on her side anymore. They had seen enough. That night marked the real shift. Isabel's friends abandoned her one by one. The whispers spread through the resort, about her cruelty, about her selfishness, about the sister she had tried to humiliate. For the rest of the trip, Isabel was isolated. She walked the beach alone, drinking heavily, glaring at us from afar, but never daring to approach again. The world she thrived in, admiration, envy, applause, had turned its back on her. Celeste, on the other hand, blossomed. She wasn't hiding anymore. We kayaked at sunrise, shared quiet talks over breakfast, explored hidden lagoons where no one else ventured. She admitted she had spent her whole life shrinking in Isabel's shadow, never believing she deserved the spotlight. Now, for the first time, she felt seen. The irony wasn't lost on me. Isabel had chased Ibiza for attention, for validation, and ended up alone in paradise. Celeste hadn't chased anything, and yet she found a kind of peace that looked more radiant on her than any designer dress ever had on Isabel. The final blow came when we checked out. Isabel tried to corner me in the lobby, her voice shrill, demanding to know how I could betray her like this. Guests turned their heads, watching the spectacle. I didn't shout. I didn't insult her. I leaned in and said quietly enough for her ears only: "You betrayed yourself the moment you decided 2 weeks in Ibiza were worth more than a lifetime with someone who would have given you everything." Her face crumpled, but I didn't linger. Celeste and I walked out together, luggage in hand, leaving Isabel in the lobby with nothing but her rage. Back home, the fallout spread like wildfire. Isabel's stories leaked through family and friends. Her attempt to paint me as the villain backfired when Celeste told the truth. Isabel's parents were humiliated, their golden daughter exposed as shallow and cruel. Their support shifted, slowly but surely, toward the daughter they had overlooked for years. Celeste and I didn't rush into anything official. We both knew the scandal would take time to cool, but the bond was undeniable. Shared betrayal has a way of welding people together, And what started as revenge began to grow into something far more dangerous, genuine affection. Isabel, meanwhile, spiraled. Without the shield of admiration, she withered. Friends cut her off, employers noticed her behavior, and the Ibiza crew she once idolized moved on without her. Her reputation was stained, not just socially, but financially. Debts from her impulsive spending piled up, and there was no one left to bail her out. I never gloated publicly. I didn't need to. Karma has a louder voice than any speech. Months later, Celeste and I returned to the Maldives, this time without shadows hanging over us. The staff remembered us, still calling us the honeymoon couple. We didn't correct them. This time, the title didn't sting. Isabel's absence lingered like a ghost, but not one that haunted me. Instead, it reminded me of the shield I had once believed in, love as protection, and how foolish that illusion had been with her. With Celeste, it wasn't about shields. It was about honesty, about scars exposed rather than hidden. In the end, Isabel got her Ibiza, a fleeting moment of attention, a burst of neon lights. And then emptiness. I got something else entirely. A partner who didn't need a stage, who didn't measure life in applause, and who knew what it meant to stand beside someone without trying to steal the spotlight. The irony of it all was simple. Isabel demanded the honeymoon canceled. She declared it worthless. And by doing so, she handed it to the one person who had deserved it all along. And that's the story. If you're still here, that means you're one of us. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button. I drop new chaos every single day, and trust me, tomorrow's story, it's even worse than this one.